Do you ever just feel like you can't control anything that's going on in your life at any given moment, and you're just kind of a little wispy leaf reacting to every little wind and water gust that's thrown your way? Yeah, me neither. So in thinking about that, being in a time of huge transition, both inwardly and outwardly, in the context of like, okay, I'm 22, my brain still isn't fully developed, which is hard to wrap my head around because, everyone acts like you're fully developed and like, oh yeah, you're like you're legally an adult, like you can make decisions, you can decide like what you want to do, where you want to be, who you want to be with in your life, and pay taxes to the man and like justify like being good enough to work in some stupid job that isn't going to bring you any fulfillment. Things like that, just common everyday worries that people think about. And as I think about that, it's a little overwhelming, but at the same time, it's kind of hilarious because it's like, what am I even doing? What am I doing it all for? And that question is only healthy to ask every once in a while. If you ask it every day, then okay, talk to your loved ones or someone. But sometimes I like to walk in the middle of the road. And that may seem totally irrelevant, but it's kind of empowering. If you've ever been in public and seen a car, like cars kind of take the cake as far as like hierarchy out and about, especially in a city. I'm talking about my experience in a city mostly. I'm not really going to walk in the middle of a road in suburbia because that is scary, because them people don't know anything about pedestrians. So they'll just drive texting on their phone and then boom. But in a city, especially one ways, it's so fun. And fun isn't the right word. It's like liberating to walk in the middle of the road. Ideally, there's no cars around. But if there are cars around, at a safe distance. And, don't test it too much. But I like to test it. I like to look at the car that's like coming towards me. Usually I do this on a one-way. Usually. And I like to like think about how they're thinking about, oh my God, what is this person doing walking in the middle of my road? Like, I own this Ford frickin' Explorer, and I chose to make people think I look like a police officer, and then they're uncertain, and then I'm not. I'm just a person who is a horrible person that buys the same type of car as police officers drive. Anyways, I like to think how they're all like confused, like, what is this person doing? And I'm like, I'm just walking. Like, what are you doing? Why are you driving towards me like that? And then like, we don't actually have this conversation, obviously. I know you're probably a little confused, but I like to test it. It's like, how close are they going to get to me before I am too scared to not move? And how close can I get to them before they're scared and they want to move? And it's just a fun thing because it's like, literally what you're watching is a stupid young person engaging in a dangerous activity. But like philosophically, what am I doing? I'm like facing down a beast, I'm facing down a multi-ton metal machine that could just like, boom, nothing. And why am I doing that? For no other reason because I can physically. I have legs and I have eyes and ears that are pretty good enough to like tell me when to, all right, get out of the way. But it's powerful. Like, here I am trying to tell you to walk in the middle of the road for fun. But to me, this is real shit because it's like, what can you control in your day-to-day life? Not that much. We have a huge, Americans especially, like we have a huge illusion of control over our lives where it's like, nah, dude, you don't have any grasp on even like your survival needs. This past week, our pipes froze and we were without running water for like 3 nights and 4 days. And like, imagine that. Like, I don't know how to take care of myself. Like, in the truest sense of the term, like, without my apartment building having running water, how can I cleanse myself? How can I drink water? How can I cook? Like, I couldn't. And then imagine, oh my God, like, some rogue nuclear-powered nation is like, oh my God, like, that one substation controls all the electricity and, like, water for this major city in the country that I don't like. Boom, gone. Everyone's like, oh my God, what do we do? So I don't know why I said that. Oh yeah, control. Like, we don't have any control over what's going on. It's all an illusion. Some things, you control your reaction to things and stuff, but like even that, not really at all. So what am I trying to say here? That's a good question. It's a great question. So why am I talking about walking in the middle of the road facing down a car? Honestly, I wasn't planning on talking about, but now I think I'm just going to run with it because the metaphor sort of works for what I'm trying to talk about. And could I have said it in layman's terms right at the beginning? Yes, but no, you're going to wait 5 minutes for some weird rant, and then we're going to get to the meat and potatoes. So there's this underlying rule of the universe, let's call it. I just came up with it. It's a rule of the universe. There's absolutely no exceptions. And basically the rule goes like this. You have objective reality, call it the physical world, call it your projection in the mind, whatever it is, reality. And then you have this cool thing called a story. And you probably don't think about stories that much, like conceptually, but you consume stories literally 24/7, nonstop, even in your dreams. You're always either producing or consuming a story. And without that unique ability, humans wouldn't be human at all. We wouldn't have anything that we have, be able to do anything that we do. And fundamentally, there's this interplay between the physical reality that we live in and the stories that we tell about it. And what happens is, sometimes it gets down to the chicken and the egg kind of argument, where we have the physical universe, right? However you believe it came into be, there's tons of stories for it. You got your biblical creator narrative. You got your Big Bang. You got your ancient mythological gods from all different cultures that work together and boom, created the universe. And so what that is a beautiful example of a story about reality. And the reality itself is what made that story possible. And it's this constant back and forth. And think about in your own life when you are stressed out. Why are you stressed out? Because you live in a certain reality with a certain set of conditions. And then there are stories layered onto that. So maybe you have a perfectly comfortable life with comfortable relationships, comfortable paycheck. You're healthy, but you're stressed chronically. Why is that? Is it because of your reality, or is it because of the stories that you tell yourself about your reality, or the stories you're told by others? And so take the car and walking in the street example. America, compared to other countries, is extremely car-centric. We have big cars, we have trucks, we have big wide roads, we have huge highway systems. Every major city has some sort of either above or below ground fast traffic system. Cars. We love cars. We love looking at them and buying them and talking about how expensive they are. And it's funny, right? And that love for cars was a product of what do I want to say here? Civilization growth, basically. A city is getting bigger, and the means of transport are requiring that people can move farther and quicker, and you got your trains and you got your cars, and there's all sorts of things. But at the root of it, there was this story that people need to get around, and we have this new technology that we've brought into reality that's going to allow that really quickly. And then people who make those cars are obviously we want to sell more cars because these things slap and they're expensive. So let's slap some people with heavy debt so that they can get around. And so then there's this narrative of people getting in the way of cars on the street, right? And the funny thing, the term jaywalking originated back in the day when calling someone a jay was an insult. Don't know how it's an insult. It's kind of funny because it's what, a blue one, a blue jay, or what are you saying to me right now? But anyway, so people were called jays as an insult to dissuade people from using roads, because roads existed and then cars were a technology that were added. So now we have cars and people on the roads, and then we're okay, that's a little dangerous, bad mixture. Someone's got to do something here. So then the car companies are let's start insulting people for walking in the street that was built for them to walk on. Let's do that. And then people get insulted for walking the street, and what's an insult? It's a story, basically, if you boil it down. And sorry, I'm trying to push the concept too hard. I just gotta let it be. But so what happens was we have this new technology brought in reality, and then they're like, oh my God, this is so great. Let's make fun of people so that they stop walking in the way of cars. And now that story has informed more car-centric development, which has further cemented cars in reality as being central to city layouts and people's choice of where they're going to live, how they're going to live, how much money they pay. Like a story saying cars are the best, let's do everything for cars, altered reality, and that reality now informs and enhances the story, where it's like, oh, of course cars must be the best because everything is about cars, right? Makes perfect sense. Which one came first, though? We don't know. We were just born into it. And now we have to, like, interpret our own understanding of, do I want to walk in the middle of the road? Yes, absolutely. Can I walk in the middle of the road physically? Yes, absolutely. Should I? Probably not. Well, why shouldn't I? Well, maybe there's laws against it, and maybe you're not supposed to walk in front of cars. Well, why aren't you supposed to walk in front of cars? Well, because they could hurt you. Well, is that the case? Or is it because if I were able to walk in front of cars, cars wouldn't have as much power in the economic world, whatever? So, yeah, did that make any sense? I hope so. Because I kind of was not expecting to talk about this with that example, but I think it kind of works. And you could literally apply this to anything at all. And so in the spirit of that, let's do another fun example, right? Maps. And maps are, what are they? They're a story about reality. Oh my God, amazing. What does the place that you live look like? Oh, here's a map. Here's a map that's taken the physical world, geography, whatever, and put it on a map so that someone can learn a story. Oh, how many Dunkin' Donuts are in Metro Boston? Well, here's a map showing all the Dunkin' Donuts, and now you've successfully consumed a story about how many Dunkin' Donuts there are in Boston. You're like, oh, I'm a Dunkin' Donuts exec. Do I want to build more Dunkin' Donuts in Boston? And forgive me for saying donuts, because I know it's just Dunkin' now, and I feel like I've said those two words way too many times sequentially, but it doesn't matter. So that map of DD will now inform whether more of them are going to be built or some are going to be removed. And so a map is a beautiful thing, and it's not just for Dunkin', Credit again to Professor Lucier for reminding of this fun fact, but in World War II, Germany invaded Poland. And forgive me if that's World War I, because I honestly can't remember. I'm like trying to remember right now as I said it, but it's already been said, so if I don't know, whatever. And you could apply this to anything. Country invades another country. Germany redrew the map of Europe to include Poland's landmass within the boundaries of Germany, which you could literally do that anytime back in the day, and people probably wouldn't know any better because we didn't have rapid communication. So if I'm just a person and I got work to do and I rely on all my world news from the newspaper that is brought to me once a week or something, and I see a map of Europe and it's like, oh, where'd Poland go? Guess it doesn't exist anymore. So whatever your definition of reality is, you've successfully taken a story and altered people's reality to think that a country no longer has its sovereignty, which is a pretty powerful thing because Germany could have done that and just not invaded Poland right away. Like they could have preemptively redrew the map instead of being like, all right, we're going to invade, we're going to get Poland, and then now Poland is going to be re-edited on the map. They could do that beforehand, and the same effect would happen. It doesn't even need the actual action because the story is powerful enough and there's nothing to contradict it because the nation is powerful enough, And that's pretty wild. Pretty wild. So think about that. Another example, boom, 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 rapid fire. Dante, right? You probably heard of Dante somewhere, sometime. Dante wrote the Divine Comedy, and that was a 3-part epic comedy. Not actually like a ha-ha comedy. Comedy means like, the average citizen could read it without being some like well-read priest or academic. But anyways, The most famous one is Inferno. And Inferno is a poem about like the descendant into hell and like all the different layers of hell and the different rings and the different punishments. And, you know, whatever you believe, I don't think Dante actually went to hell and then made a poem about it. So he wasn't like, yo, what up, Satan, tell me about this. All right, so first ring, you got your pridefuls, and then you got your wrathfuls. Okay. No, he just made it up with his beautiful, creative, artistic imagination. And to this day, that was like closer to 1,000 years ago than like 500. So long time. And nowadays, since then, so many artists have like turned those words into like paintings, and people depict his rings of hell visually and like really bring the life out of it. And what that has done is made the common person at that time, because Dante was from Italy, which was like a birthplace of the Renaissance, and like all these thinkers and innovators of the time basically like elevated global consciousness in a way, right? I say right as if you're like right with me here. I literally don't think I'm making sense half the time, but it's fun. Okay, so Dante was a single person who did a little cute art thing, and since then he has shaped the way that millions upon millions of people, generations upon generations, have perceived the afterlife. And hell has been a concept, and that's obviously what informed Dante's iteration of it. But Dante took it, altered the story, and cemented this real vision of what hell looks like. And whether you're religious or not doesn't really matter. You can't deny that the afterlife holds a huge weight on a lot of people for the way they act and the way they exist amongst other people. So this dude just made a story, and then millions of people altered their lifestyle, altered what they did, what they dreamed of, what they pursued, who they loved, who they didn't love, all for the hope of avoiding this horrible image of hell that he has portrayed. And whether that was a direct, one-to-one relationship, like, oh, Dante said that this happened in hell, so it doesn't matter, because it's still there, and it informed the culture, and informed the general progression of a religion and of a faith of people. And that's crazy. That's crazy. Imagine having that much like power and legacy just from a story. And because what did Dante ultimately do that our society would call productive? Nothing. He wrote a poem, pretty long one too, so it's probably a headache to get through the whole thing, right? You know what I'm talking about. And he changed the world like crazy big time. And that's pretty powerful. And sure, it's definitely not the same as like a car company insulting pedestrians so that there's more room for cars, but it's the same concept. And that's what I think is so cool about this idea. And you can apply it to like everything. Like look at, if you're into like nature and the environment, a tree. Trees are telling stories all the time. And we know that because we can chop them down and look at all the rings. And we can say, this tree is this old. This tree was exposed to this bacteria or infection, and it fought it off. And at this point in time, the story is there. The story is woven into reality. And the difference between like us and, let's say, a deer is that a deer is like reactive to reality and reactive to the stories. It's not really as capable of like forging them and like pulling them all out. And that's what science is. Science, in essence, is science is a simple process of identifying stories that already exist in reality. And we get more and more access to more and more stories through technological advancement, through theories and knowledge sharing and everything. But that's all it is. That's all it is. It's looking at objective reality and telling a story about it. And then what's poetry? It's looking at objective reality and telling a story about it. Like, it's all the same. It's all the same. And whether objective reality is like physical or internal feelings or emotions, it doesn't matter, because it's real, and it's real enough to tell a story about it. And then the story changes how the real thing is, you know? You know what I'm saying? And God, like, how cool is that our lives are so utterly simple in the midst of all the complexity, all the like scary deadlines and commitments and things you got to do, or that you think you have to do, because there's a story that's been put onto you like, oh my God, you're a youth in the United States of America, you better go to college or you're not going to have a future, nobody's going to love you, you're not going to make any money. Wrong. And you know how scary it is to deviate from those stories that people tell you and that freaking pound them into your head? It's so terrifying because you're convinced that reality is closed off in certain ways unless you engage with this narrative that has been pushed onto you. Right? I'm getting a little anti the man right now, but I think we all feel that sometimes, at least. So I think I've made my point. And whether this makes any sense or not doesn't matter, because it's just a story at the end of the day. But just a story is not a good way of saying it, because a story is arguably, and here's where the lesson that you didn't ask for and probably don't need comes in, where I like try to like say something profound that's not really all that profound, but I think will maybe make your worldview different, which is, even if it's just a little smidge of difference, a little smidge of like, didn't think about that, then we're good. You and I are good. We're great, actually. So basically, right, once you acknowledge this relationship and you I don't know if whether this is the first time you're hearing it or not, but think about it and think about how it applies to different aspects of your life. Depression, anxiety, love, families, all of these things abide by this rule of the universe that I just came up with. And once you identify it, you can understand in what scenarios, what thing is most at play, what thing is holding the most weight. And sometimes reality is so crushing. It rips the frickin' life out of you sometimes. It rips out the motivation. It pummels you into a fine powder. And maybe you're telling the right story, but it's just like reality is so harsh. Or the story you're telling or being told is brutal. It's misinformed. It's false. It's deceptive. It's self-destructive. It's just untruthful. Despite your reality, that story is going to hold all the weight. It's going to weigh you down physically, emotionally, spiritually. And identifying that dynamic allows you to intervene and to stop and say, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right. I'm sorry. But it's cool, because when you're like me currently, where it's just like objectively things are going pretty well, but like, damn, what's going on? Like, why am I not like enthralled with everything? It's because the story I'm telling is not reflective of reality, or it's out of balance with reality, or it's too harsh on reality. If I alter the story, if you alter any of your stories, you have the power to change your reality. And knowing about reality's weight on the story allows for you to be okay with things, and allows for you to allow things. So, as always, I will cut myself off from excited repetition, and I will leave you with a thoughtful quote from a gentleman named Christopher Ryan, who inspired this sort of topic exploration. And he says that the first human invention is still the most powerful. Who tells the story creates the world. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, if you were captivated by anything at all, just tell one person about it. Don't even tell them about this podcast. Just tell them about the thoughts that you had. Spark up a conversation. Get some ideas flowing, because that's what it's all about. So thank you again. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.